So, um, hi, my name is Dario. I am a developer, data artist, and in general a dilettante. And I'm gonna be talking to you guys today about machine learning, what it is, and how can we apply it for art. And I'm gonna make special emphasis on neural networks, which are kind of the forefront of deep learning and of machine learning nowadays. So let's see what we're gonna see. I'm gonna give you a brief overview of what machine learning is. Then we're gonna go over what neural networks are. And once we know what a neural network is, I'm gonna explain what deep learning is, which is actually not very different from what a neural network is. It's just a kind of term on top, but just so you guys know what it is. I'm going to be doing a bit of showing a few examples of how you can use deep learning in art and how I've used it in some of my artworks. And then if we have time, I'll move on to convolutional neural networks, which is where things get really weird. And I can show you some software that you can use both for deep learning and neural networks and convolutional ones. And then I will show you some examples of art depending on how long we have. So, okay, so let's get through it. Can I see a show of hands of how many people have ever done any programming? Okay. How many people have done any math? Have you studied math in high school? And when I say, for example, when I say programming, I don't mean like making a website. I mean, you know, making a machine doing something based on some recipe. Anyways, so this talk is going to contain a little bit of math, but it's all sums and multiplications and functions. So if you don't understand anything, just or something, just let me know, and I will take a pause and continue to take a pause, explain, and then continue. And then at the end there'll be some time for questions, but I'd much rather have them right away because you never know what happens. So we're gonna first talk about machine learning, which is a field of computer science that studies computer algorithms for us to learn how to do stuff, or the computer algorithms that learn how to do stuff. So it's another way of saying programming by example. We make a machine that has a program that learns how to do better in the future based on what it's seen in the past. So you show it some examples and give it some result of what you want those examples to be. And then it will see novel examples and take a guess, or a very educated mathematical guess at, you know, say classifying it or giving a probability. So in machine learning, there are two main types of problems. Ones that we call classification problems and ones that we call regression problems. So classification problems are just, you know, have a bunch of things and you want to put them in a group. So let's say, is this a stock that's going to go up or down? Because it's two classes of stocks, no? Ones that are losing and ones that are getting more valuable. Or what genre is this song? Or, you know, what gender is the person browsing my web? Or is the person browsing my web a person who's going to buy something or who's not going to buy something? Or is this email spam? That's kind of like the most classical one. Regression, on the other hand, we actually try to predict the real value, like from 0 to 1 or n. So say, for example, what's the probability of rain tomorrow? Or how much will this stock go up and down? Or down, sorry. And how much this house will sell for. So here's an example, like a really small machine learning task. You can see the data is divided in two. We have some data, some examples, and some labels. And you see the data is divided in two parts: the training data and the test data. So our training data shows us some names of animals, and next to them they have a label. So an ant has a minus, a bat has a plus, a dolphin has a minus, leopard has a plus, etc. And then we have a set of test examples, and we have to label them. So can anybody take a guess at what the label will be for tiger? Okay, so most people would have probably guessed plus. And for tuna would be a minus. And for platypus, right, so here's where the key is, like, what sort of rule are we using? You could say, okay, so land mammals get a plus, and you know, any other type of animal gets a minus. But then, how would you label platypus? Is it land, or, you know, it lives in the water? But then, you know, we have dolphins that live in the water, or, you know, maybe animals that don't live in the water and don't lay eggs. Then tiger would be a plus and platypus a minus. So the idea is that you can never do 100% right in this kind of cases, because you're only as right as your rule is. And, you know, nothing's stopping a computer from thinking, okay, well, things that have a plus are things that start with a B, an L, a Z, or an M. And then all of our test data would be a minus. So what we're doing here is we're building a model to minimize the error between the labeling, our labeling, and our actual data. So a bit more in detail, we have a set of label training examples. We build a machine learning algorithm, and this algorithm creates a new prediction rule, and then when it sees a new example, it would predict the classification. Right, so let's move on to neural networks, which are a type of machine learning algorithm, and it's kind of cool because they were created in the 80s from you know, a bunch of cognitive scientists were trying to, you know, replicate the way the brain works, and they started having a look at, okay, so neurons fire like this, do these things, and how about we do them with computers? So there was a biological inspiration for this. The thing is, there was a long time after they got good results in the 80s, and then it was like another technique, and it was kind of dormant. And then in the last few years, right after I kind of graduated from uni, with the advent of, you know, GPUs, like the graphics cards on your computers, these neural networks have gotten really, really big, and right now they're kind of the next big thing. But everybody kind of is still a bit skeptical, just in case. We might be in front of you know, another one of those kind of smoke selling things. Anyways, so let's have a look first at how neurons work. So here is a neuron. You can see neurons are cells that you can find in the bodies of animals and most higher animals, and I think it's just animals. I'm not sure. Not a biologist, but it's a highly specialized cell that has developed these things called dendrites, which are kind of nerve endings that connect to other neurons, and these nerve endings receive electrical impulses that get sent to the cell body, and then the cell body, based on the impulses, it can then send through its axon, this kind of elongated kind of arm, can send its own electrical impulse to other neurons connected through these terminals on the axons. So that's pretty much how a cell body works. The dendrites can be excitatory or inhibitory. So, you know, sometimes if a dendrite receives a signal, then it might make the cell say, oh, no, not when this happened. And then some of them are excitatory. So if they receive that signal, the chances of the neuron spiking are higher. Spiking is the term that they refer to when they say a neuron sends a signal. So what they did was to kind of create a computational model of, or like mathematical model of these neurons, and they're actually kind of simple. So This is a mathematical model of a neuron. By the way, all the slides here are from Princeton or Stanford, I don't know, course on neural networks. So yeah, you guys are getting that for free. So you can see here we've got these arrows are kind of our dendrites from the previous image, and every input is labeled as x0. So x0, x1, and x2. The x's are the inputs that come from other cells. The weights of the neurons are the weights on the dendrites indicate or allows us to model whether a connection is excitatory, as in it contributes to a higher output of the, or like a more contributes towards the cell spiking, or inhibitory, as in it doesn't, right? So it detracts the cell from spiking. And the reason why that happens is because inside the cell body, what we do is we sum, that's what this big backwards E looks like. That means the sum over all the inputs multiplied by their weight. So for each input, multiply it by its weight, sum it all up, add a bias, and then run it through a function, usually a sigmoid function. A sigmoid function is a function that usually returns either 0 or 1 based on some threshold. So that means we simulate the spiking by our function returning 1, or not spiking by the function returning 0. So this is what a sigmoid function is. You can see on the bottom the input, and on the top the output. So if the sum of all the weights is -10, so it's very low, then the cell won't spike. But the moment we cross like -4, the cell starts spiking, and at 1, this is our neuron spikes. On the bottom you see you can implement in Python. This is Python. It's a pretty simple language you should all learn. It's implementation of a neuron, so it's just 3 lines of code, 4 or 5 lines of code. Sum all the inputs, add the bias, and then just divided by this sigmoid function, so exponent. So yeah, so what can a single neuron do? Well, single neurons are called linear classifiers. So neuron can say yes or no, basically. And yes or no in math means a straight line. So imagine we have plotted here from a database or a data set of plants. You can see there's 2 big groups, right? Some have really short petals and short sepals, and then there's another kind of group where they kind of correlate. So we could train a single neuron to adjust the weights and say, okay, if the sepal length and the petal length are less than this, let's then separate them. So we can train a neuron to draw a line through a space and create 2 groups, which is quite good, no? We can separate things and classify one type from the other. Turns out, that's not super simple. So if we, I don't know if you've ever seen what AND is, but imagine we have 2 inputs, one and one is on our x-axis, and one is our x-axis, sorry. And let's imagine we want it to spike, or we want our neuron to say, to fire when both inputs are true, but not when either. That's called AND. So a neuron can be really easily trained to do that. You can just draw a line there, and boom, that's your AND problem fixed. What about OR? OR is kind of another one. So we want the neuron to fire when it sees either of the inputs or both. Perfect. You just draw a line down here. We separate the no's from the yeses, and we get it. So now, what about if you want to do XOR? So XOR is just exclusive OR. So we don't want it to fire when both are on. We only want it to fire when either is on. And it turns out, if you try and draw a line through here, there's no way to draw a line. So we have to do something else. Ideally, we would have to draw two lines, one on the bottom and one on the top, and just take the kind of the diagonal space that we have there. So how could we do this? Well, the answer is pretty simple. We just add more neurons. So what we can do is have, this is what it starts to look a bit like a network, right? So the previous neurons we saw, they are here. We have two OR and ANDs. And then, so we have a topology that lets us have one of the neurons is in charge of picking up the OR, and one is in charge of picking up when not AND, so when all of the other ones are on. And then we kind of join both of those features. So we have these two neurons understand something lower level, and then we have another neuron that just makes sure that OR and AND are both on. And then boom, we get it. We only have our XOR complete. Whoa. So yeah, that's a bit fast, but basically, what this means is that if we have a network with a hidden layer that is taking some existing features and creating new ones. It's been proven that we can model any function, and if you keep on adding layers, we can have infinitely complex functions completely just solved by this. So this is where the idea of deep networks comes. So these layers that we don't have access to, they get deeper and deeper and deeper, and that's why they call them deep neural networks. It's nothing else than that. It's just the idea that layered networks can then model any function. So just to recap, imagine you want to classify these points. You can train one layer of the network to divide like vertically, one horizontally, and boom, we've got that. And if you want to go even higher, you can then you can pretty much draw any shape. And the way we do this is by looking at the output layer, seeing how far away from the result we are, so how much error we have, and then moving the weights on the layers and the biases up or down in small increments, and propagating those changes down into the input, and measuring the network, and then repeating that, and then a computer does that. So it's not us. We just say what we want and what the result has to be, and then we run what's called backpropagation, which is completely out of scope here, and not even I understand. Anyways, the next thing I'm going to show you is an example of a neural network learning. So this is running right now on the browser, and it's being fed the points, which are red or green, and we can have it. This is how it looks inside the network. So these are our layers. We can show it some circle data or a spiral data, and you can see how the network is learning how to separate those two groups. Right. So how can you use neural networks in art, and what are they good for? So I'm going to show you an example from a show that I've done. There is a piece of software by Rebecca Febrink, which kind of makes all the process of training a neural network super easy. It allows you to connect pieces of data from systems that have an input and an output. So imagine you have, a keyboard that is giving you MIDI notes, and you have a light that has to come on and off. You can train really complex behaviors with a neural network using Wakinator with just kind of making some training examples, and I really highly recommend you have a look at this, or catch me after so I can explain it to you. So we did a show at the Roundhouse in the summer where we wanted to translate live sounds from singers into a particle system. And what was happening was that we created this really nice like particle system that could be modified and could run around and make lots of little like cool shapes. And we had a really, really complex audio processing software that could extract thousands of, 12 features in real time from whoever's playing or whoever's talking to the machine. And then we had to kind of connect one and the other. And not only that, we had to make each microphone cause the particles to behave differently. So we started doing it manually, but we realized that we would have to kind of work out in some strange way every single like mapping from a value to a behavior and stuff. So instead, what we did was use a neural network. I had the idea of saying, well, why don't we just show it what we want it to look and then give it some input, so ask the singers to make the noise that they would make during the performance, and then have the neural network learn the connections. So we had a really complex kind of system running in Unity where you could make, the particles move really fast or move really like in hexagons, or control their tails, their like how chaotic they were. And we had for each microphone in the show we had 12. We had a software that would convert the sound into 12 numbers, a vector of 12 numbers. But then we had this. You see all these sliders here. This is all the things that we could tweak in real time. So how long the particle stayed, the offsets, the speed, the force, the color, the hue, how much bloom, etc. So what we did was put for each one of the microphones, we put a neural network in charge of doing this. So instead of us having to mess around, we just said, okay, let's see what we want it to look like, very, very shiny when there's a lot of sound. Okay, but let's put these sliders to the maximum and then make a lot of sound, record the sound, and then the Wekinator is able to then say, okay, that means when there's a lot of sound, I want this to be up, and when there's no sound, I want this to be down. So it learns to kind of respond, and we got also some amazing emergent behavior. So this worked really well, and we got a lot of good reviews. I'm also working with a little toy example here, where I kind of had the same. So I made this face that had lots of sliders that control, left eyebrow, right eyebrow, the size of the pupils, the size of the mouth, and then I connected that to, I said, wow, this is too much for me to control in real time. So what if I looked at Paul Ekman's idea of emotions. What if I could just, instead of having 20 sliders, I could just have one slider per emotion. So imagine, instead of me having to move the eyebrows up and the eyes, etc., I could just make the face happy or sad. Or what if I want to make it happy and sad? Or how can we do that? So what I did was take those 20 sliders and then connect them via Wekinator to a set of 6 sliders, and those 6 sliders would just say happy, sad, angry, disgust, etc. So then on one side I make the when I wanted to learn, I put up, say, the happy slider, and that puts up the happiness is dope, and then I make the face on the controller how I want it to be. And then I teach the neural network that that's a happy face. And I do the same for happy, sad, angry, disgust, contempt. And then what happened is I was able to change and kind of go through all of the emotions. And then what I did further was then to do the opposite. So take a picture of my face and use some existing software called CLN Tracker to extract from my facial features some values of emotions. And so then the computer would then understand my emotions, and then I would have a set of 6 emotions that I can send to the face, and the face would basically respond to me. So that's what you're seeing here. in this, it's a work in progress, so I don't have anything better. But I'm making kind of pouting faces and happy faces, and the face is kind of responding to my gestures. So yeah, you can. Hopefully somebody will commission me, and I'll put this somewhere where you guys can go and play with it. So yeah, all right. So how are you guys doing? We're on the half point. I'm now going to go where things get weird. So those were neural networks, and those work really well for just features, things like numbers, like data. But you know, as humans, we work with images mostly. Like most of our brain is devoted to images. So some inspired researcher, actually in the 80s as well, but nobody really took much attention to it, decided to simulate how the brain processes vision. Sorry. So our brain, the vision system in the brain works like this. So imagine you see a fish, your retina sends the entire image through the LNG, which is lateral geniculate nucleus, and it compresses that and sends it to the V1. The V1 is the first area of the visual cortex that receives those images and then starts extracting features. So it looks for, you know, lines, corners, sharp changes of color, and it has a huge amount of data. And then that data those neurons spike up to more specialized neurons, more complex neurons, that then trigger, you know, more things like, okay, 2 corners or a circle or a hexagon, and then those bubble up through more and more specialized cells until they're able to, you know, distinguish, hey, that's a fish, woo, and then, you know, you might get scared or you might hunt it or whatever. So convolutional neural network tries to simulate this, and the way it simulates it is by before we apply our neural network, what we do is we apply some kernel convolutions. So what are kernel convolutions? They're a bit like what the brain does in the first layer. They're little matrices like this that you can apply to images, and they can be used. They're used all the time in like Photoshop, or mostly Photoshop or GIMP or whatever is your image tool to extract things like edges. So this is an edge detection or like outline detector, but there is, you know, Sobel detectors which detect maybe the top or the right or the left. So yeah, they're quite useful, and they're mostly used for you know, image editing, but also for neural networks. So let's see our neural network. Let's imagine we want to, I don't know, work out the price of a bike. So we could have maybe, you know, this on the first node, maybe what year it was built, maybe number 2, the second node would be the weight and the number of gears and the frame size. But then you have to, you know, sit down with your bike and then ask all these questions and put it in. What if instead we wanted to do it through just an image? So you could take every single pixel in the image and then put it as a node, but then you would have way too much information. So imagine a, I don't know, 7 megapixel photo would be, you know, 7 million of these, and no computer will do it. So what we do is we get inspiration from the brain, and we use these kernel convolutions to extract features first of the image that we're seeing, and then we obtain like a set of features that we have derived to be useful. So essentially what we have is a complicated function of the inputs to obtain an output, which is the price of the bike. So if you think of the image of a bike, it kind of separates it in 3, so we've got red, green and blue. And then for each one of those layers, we have what are called convolutions that will maybe extract, you know, the outlines or sides or the top, or, you know, look at whether the frame is up or anyways, the essential key is that we don't train So sorry, we don't set those convolutions. We train them. So the same way we train the bike, our normal network, we we have a bunch of data that tells us how much each bike costs based on some examples that say we could get from Gumtree, for example, and then we have the network find out what the appropriate convolutions are, what the appropriate kernels that we have to apply. The idea is that we have enough kernels that at the end, instead of having like a 7 megapixel picture, we have a 1 by 1 picture, one pixel image that then we can plug onto our network and derive a solution. So yeah, modern tools like Caffe or TensorFlow allow you to do this in seconds. You just basically use some standard setup and you're ready to go. You could apply it for anything, as long as you have loads of data. Loads of data is the basic idea. So this is pretty cool, but why is it so big? Well, there is an online data set of images called ImageNet, which every year holds a competition to see who can do the best at identifying objects in photos with computers, right? So who can write the best software. And one lucky researcher in 2012 decided to use convolutional neural networks to identify these things. Turns out there was a leap in, like a quantum leap in results, and they got such good results that ever since then we jumped from 70% accuracy to 96% accuracy, and we get this. This is the results from 2012. Since then it's gotten really, really way better, but they're able to identify a person, hammer, flowerpot, etc. So yeah, things have been getting really weird since then, because now computers can see in the same way we see. Mathematically, it's the same way. So in late 2015, I don't know if you ever saw that idea of Google Deep Dream. They enable you to see what to kind of coerce the neural network to see things in it. But the idea is that we can excite those middle convolutions to get to fit an image that we want, or exacerbate. Hey, if this network has been trained to see cats, let's change this image so that the cat neurons in our network, which we don't really know, but we can identify by feeding it a picture of cats, light up, and then we get these weird pictures full of cats. But more serious research led to things like this. This is a picture of bedrooms, as you can see, and they look like bedrooms to you, right? So you would think, oh well, these are probably really small pictures taken from Airbnb or something like that. Well, it turns out every single one of these pictures has been generated by a neural network, and it's not a real bedroom. It's what they call a completely latent space of bedrooms. So in May 2016, some researchers, I think at Stanford, I'm not sure, they created what's called a convolutional generative adversarial network, which basically has one of the networks that we had before trying to generate images, and another network saying, hey, is that a bedroom or not? So basically one is playing deceive to the other, and they're trying to deceive the one that's meant to be say no. And then when it manages to deceive, they look at the model that is created. So this is what happened. They were able to create these bedrooms that you can kind of walk through the latent space and interpolate. So imagine you can just take this big vector of noise of all the kind of neurons at the high level, and then it'll create one of these pictures. And then if you move along this space, like the same way you would move in three-dimensional space by moving the numbers on the vector really slowly, you get things that are similarly kind of dreams, hallucinations that are similar but change. So you can see on the third row the screen morphs, so the window turns into a screen and then turns back into a wall. Yeah, it's pretty nuts. And it gets even worse because they applied it to faces and they were able to do arithmetic on faces. None of these people exist, even though they look, I mean, these ones look really ugly. The newer versions are just amazingly detailed. But you can like have the vector that describes a smiling woman minus the vector that describes a neutral woman, and you added the vector of the neutral man and you get a smiling man. So you can do arithmetic on faces. Or you can, you know, rotate faces on latent space. So somebody has done a Twitter bot that applies this called Smile Vector that we can have a look at later. But just so you take a guess, what are these? Yeah, so as you can probably guess, they are album covers, but none of these album covers exists. They've just been trained with other album covers. So yeah, this one looks a bit like the Pixies, maybe, or I don't know. Just there's something that a neural network identifies to be album covery, if you understand. So yeah, that's pretty scary. I tried to do the same by scraping the entire, pretty much all of the users of Grindr, this dating app, and I extracted all their faces and tried to generate, you know, virtual gay dudes in your area, and that's a few. They looked really horrible, but to be honest, they look pretty much like the ones you find on the app, so it's pretty nice. So let's see some more examples, and let's think about a bit what it means about, you know, for computers to start doing art. So I like this quote that was posted by Mario Klingemann. So Peter sees the computer, and it says, "But the machine only creates what humans have taught it to," says Peter. And Mommy says, "So do you." So the thing is, these days, most large companies are moving they're starting to drive the art world. I mean, I'm sure you'll always be able to paint, but you know, they're doing bigger things. They're pushing the art world forward. And you know, you can now be an artist in residence at Facebook or at Google or at Unity or I don't know, or like CSV, I don't know. Anyways, the idea is that, you know, now with a neural network, you could take, you can do what's called style transfer. You can take a picture from Van Gogh and take a picture of you know, Stanford University, and then have the neural network painted in the style of Van Gogh. Is that art? I don't know. It's not for me to say. You can take, I don't know, this self-portrait of Picasso and take a portrait of Brad Pitt, and boom. There's an app for your phone that does this. A lot of people use it. You should go to hell if you use it because it's horrible. Then this is image to image. So this got really huge on Twitter the other day. But you can basically draw a kitty. Okay, watch my kitty. And the neural network will make some sort of attempt to make a cat. It takes a while sometimes. It might not work. Oh yeah, so there's that horrible nightmare that could be a cat. But you know, you can do shoes as well. So you can make a shoe that looks shoey, and it will try. I can draw, but you can play with this at home. So yeah, it's quite an interesting one. You can make handbags and stuff. So yeah, pretty cool. Let's look at this guy, Mario Klingemann. So this looks like a painting, but it's actually, he took loads of paintings and then he makes sketches and then creates new ones. So is it art now? Now that there's a human behind it, you think it's art? I don't know. It's not for me to decide. But he makes some amazing stuff that, yeah, if I didn't tell you they were paintings, that they were generated by a neural network, you would think, wow, that's some pretty heavy stuff. I don't like them, they're a bit scary. I really like this one. It looks a bit like kind of, you know, Renaissance stuff, or those like a bit more modern art. This, I don't know if this is safe for work, I don't know. Anyways, but one of the cool things he did was this neural face thing where you're gonna see a fully generated video clip of François Hardy, just from looking at looking at her videos and just running through space. So the neural network learned what a picture of François Hardy was, and it learned its face, and then the neural network is able to generate infinite amounts of pictures of her that don't exist, that look kind of like the music video, but not quite. And yeah, it's just scary. He's done a lot of these things. So I'm just gonna leave you there because I've probably run on this way too long. But if you're interested in seeing what neural networks can do, just get in touch with me after the talk and we can have a chat. And yeah, thanks a lot.